Jazakallah khair, and thank you again, Action for Humanity, for sponsoring this event. I'm sure we all agree and we commend the incredible work that they're doing in the humanitarian space on the ground. Moving on to our next segment, which is a panel discussion. So I'd like to invite Brother Hasan Salim Patel to the stage, who's going to chair our discussion. Brother Hasan is the head of comms at MCB and is an international journalist who has worked for the BBC and Al Jazeera. Was an international journalist. He's a communication specialist who has worked in the US, UK, and Qatar, and is an expert in journalism and broadcasting. Joining him on the panel, could I please invite Sister Sherifat Akintunde-Shitu. Sister Sherifat is a multi-award-winning data and AI leader and UK, Ireland, and Africa Master Data Management Capability Lead at Accenture. Also, Shafiuddean Choudry. Brother Shafiuddean is a career technologist focusing on big data and AI transformation projects. He co-founded the RIS test, which is a project to measure how Muslims are portrayed in film and media. And last but not least, Zahid Mahmood. Brother Zahid is the founder of Anterior, a Series B AI startup based in the United States that uses generative AI to automate annual admin workflows in healthcare. He is also the co-founder of the Muslim Tech Festival. Brother Hasan, over to you.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Is anyone tired? Sleepy? Do you want me to get the aircon down to about 0 degrees? That'll keep us awake. But hopefully, this great discussion will keep us awake. Hence why we've had it after lunch. So we've had the theory, but now let's have a bit of a conversation on the practicalities of AI. And an apt title for this particular session, how Muslim organizations can use AI practically. Now, we've heard people talk today, AI is everywhere, but for a lot of our organizations, there's one question: how do we actually use it? What do we do, and how do you utilize it in the best way? It's about using the right tools. Hopefully it can save time. I know of a particular mosque that still uses double entry bookkeeping. I think AI could probably help them, but there's a bit more to it than that. So hopefully, with today's panelists, we can exactly figure out what this system could look like. We'll have a discussion. We'll get some comments, views, and opinions from our distinguished panel, but also questions from yourselves. But before we kind of bring it out to the audience, there's some microphones there, our speakers, so I think you may need to share 2 between 3, and then when the questions happen, give 1 to our roving mic person. But Sherifat, if I can start with you, and this is a general question for all 3 of you. In simple terms, what are some real useful ways Muslim organizations can start using AI today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. That is a really good question to start with, and I think we've had some of those conversations through the day. For a lot of us Muslim organizations, the reality is we're all trying to do more with less. We all have similar challenges around our budgeting, around attracting more of our community to the mosque. And some of these are challenges that you can use AI to solve for you. And I put it even as basic as any of those challenges that you think about, pop it into ChatGPT or Gemini, which we've heard a bit about today, and say, can you come up with some options for me for how to solve this? Can you come up with some options for how I can reach the community better to attract more people to the masjid? Can you come up with a campaign for me on how to raise funds? Now, it might give you generic answers, but what you could also do to get better answers, as it was talked about earlier in those prompt engineering workshops, is to then say, I am a masjid in Bury, I am a masjid in East London, I have a community that is mostly of this demography. Can you create a campaign for me to raise funding from this community? And that's one use case that I think that you can adopt with minimal new technology implementation.
Jazakallah khair. Shaf, how can a Muslim organization use AI? Practical example.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think just to maybe frame the question, in the audience, just by way of putting your hands up, who actually uses, just put your hands up, who uses one of the LLMs or one of the AI tools? Yeah, so I'd say probably most. And then keep your hands up, Bismillah. And keep your hands up if you've read the terms and conditions of those AI models. Okay, so it's one. So you've got a small handful. So I guess for me, the question comes from how do we use it practically? I think the question starts with why use AI. The question is what you're trying to achieve, and you know why go to AI in the first place. I think for me it's what is AI going to benefit than doing it any other way, and that comes from experience from working with large organisations and charities and whatnot. There's no obligation to use AI. There's no one's forcing you to use AI. Actually, the obligation is coming from the large organisations, the OpenAIs, the Googles, and Anthropics and whatnot. They're incentivized to get to use these models. So I guess my question would always come back to, well, why are you using AI? Why? And before you start using a tool, like you've done, read the terms and conditions and understand.
I only did that because I was told by my legal officer for work purposes.
Well, that's good. And what did you find in that? Did you find anything concerning, or was it all, alhamdulillah, good?
Well, there's elements of rights of content, and how much they can keep and what they can use. Mm-hmm. But I reckon in a professional setting, it's different because of the contracts you have. But for an organisation that's voluntary, no one's really got the time, have they, to kind of read the terms and conditions or understand the nuances of what needs to be done.
Interesting. So I guess before you can use something practically, for me, it comes from the why. Well, why? What will AI give you that you can't do any other way? The example you gave about double entry bookkeeping in that masjid.
It does exist.
It does exist, and I completely can believe it. But then, will AI solve that, or will one of the volunteers from the community who's actually an accountant who has some spare time, maybe that brother or sister can help? That's not necessarily an AI problem. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and pass over to Zahid.
Not a problem. Zahid, practical examples, or do you want to go before why as well? Not by all means.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you for having me on the panel, and really excited to share some thoughts and observations. After you've finished reading the terms and conditions that Shaf has pointed you towards, and unfortunately I've spent a long time reading the terms and conditions for a lot of these AI large language model providers, since my startup is essentially built on this technology. There are some practical ways that you can implement it, and really it's everyone in this room knows how they can use it best. It's not for me to tell you how you can apply it practically, but I want to share with you the insight that really gravitated me towards using AI for workflows and then to build a business around it as well. And since half of you already raised your hands, perhaps this is a realization you've already had. But if it's one that you haven't had, perhaps the next few words that I'm going to share is something that helps, push you into action. And that's that when you use these technologies and these tools, and we use ChatGPT as the common example, is you very quickly realize it's the most intelligent, smartest, hardworking, but completely incompetent intern you've ever had. It can do almost anything you ask it to do, but it needs to be told exactly how to do it. And so if there are workflows and tasks within your organizations, within the projects that you're working on, where you're like, this is really easy to do, it's really mind-numbing, and I don't want to be spending hours of my time working on solving this particular problem, that's probably a good entry or a good wedge for you to explore using some of these tools to try and abstract that away. So the immediate realization or gain that you'll have from it is that you're not spending time and effort thinking as to how to apply yourself to solve a problem. You can hand that over to one of these tools to do so. Shaf is absolutely right. Make sure you understand what the terms and conditions are saying, especially when it comes to pasting in sensitive information and data. But at the same time, don't be too afraid and put too many guardrails in place too early on. It's not like the AI overlords are going to take over tomorrow. It will probably take a couple of years until that realization comes to play.
Thank you, Zahid. I'm going to ask you some individual questions. Shaf, you've kind of touched upon it, but what's the most common mistakes organizations may make when they rush into AI, apart from not reading the terms and conditions?
I think Zahid kind of mentioned it in terms of putting a lot of sensitive data privacy is a huge deal, especially for MCB. It's a collection of masajid who are all all of them are registered charities. So if you think about the regulatory framework that exists around all of our day-to-day jobs, you've got the Charity Commission, you've got Prevent, you've got GDPR, plus you've got the AI Act. So you've got all these regulatory framework around it. I think I completely agree with Zahid. Don't be scared of using these tools, and don't let there be too many obstacles being put in your way. But I think one of the biggest problems I see is how cavalier organizations can be with private data. Each of the audience work in a masjid, and there's an amana upon you, on those who attend your masjid, and the people who come, and the data that they may share with you. So being a little bit cavalier with the privacy is a huge deal. I work in the corporate world, and I know you do, Sherifat, and Zahid, mashallah, he's creating a corporate giant, inshallah. Any corporate entity you work for, they don't allow you to use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever for company-sensitive information. Typically, they'll create a walled garden version that you can use internally. So use AI, use it internally, but don't go out sharing company-sensitive information. If organizations are being so guarded with their IP and company-sensitive information, we should be more so as a Muslim community, and from Masajid and the people who attend the Masajid and the courses and the services you offer, there needs to be an added higher bar that we need to consider.
It's very interesting you say that, because Sherifat, Shaf's touched upon messy data or GDPR issues. A lot of masajids will have a separate donor list, an accounting list, membership list. How can they start organizing it better to try and get the best use of AI?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say how can they use AI to organize it better, because I wouldn't want you putting the list of your donors and people in your masajid in any AI tool, because if you read the fine prints, like Shaf has advised already, you would see that some of your data is going back to feed those models.
So basically you're saying don't put private personal data into AI if you're in a masjid?
Not even if you're, not just as a masjid, even personally, don't put your personal details into any AI tool, especially publicly available AI tools. Now back to the messy data. AI is powerful, driving decisions, whether you're using AI or not. You need to have the right data to drive some of those decisions. And having the right data is about completeness of data. So think about it. You may have your donor list, but how many of us actually know what the demography of our audience is? We can probably guess and say, I think we have a older audience or we have a younger audience, but do we really collect any kind of data that allows us to tailor our services, that allows us to tailor how we target our community, that allows us to tailor how we shape our khutbahs, how we attract the younger generation? And when we collect their data, how do we actually keep it secure? Do we have them in papers somewhere that somebody could misplace and somebody could peek? And even though the paper is not a system, you still have GDPR obligations around that data because you've collected it. So we need to think deeply about how we collect data, what we collect data, and do you really need to collect the data? So I was coming on the train journey this morning, and I actually posted about this on LinkedIn, and I wanted to sign into the Wi-Fi, and it was asking for my email address. And so I gave it Yoke Mail. That's a disposable email, because why do you need my email address to connect to Wi-Fi? So as you collect that data because you want to know your community and you want to know your Masajid members better, also think deeply about what data do you collect. You really need it before you collect it. The more data you collect, the more you have to clean, the more you have to keep up to date, the more you have to keep accurate, and the higher risk that you then hold for protecting that data and protecting people's private information.
Thank you. Before I go on to Zahid, Sherifat, you've worked throughout the world and you've worked in remote places where you've used AI to kind of make change. What can British Muslim organizations learn from that experience that you've had?
I think one of the things that I will note is especially when you think about Africa, it's been quite interesting that when Africa adopts technology, they tend to leapfrog even ahead of some of the developing countries in how they use technology. And that's where I would say a lot of times we think we're not ready or we don't have enough resources. But this is a technology that allows you to do more with less. So we're now seeing organizations in Africa, I think there's particular banks as well, where they do not have enough budget for marketing, but are able to create hyper-personalized marketing to their customers because they're using AI to generate some of those marketing teams, and so they don't need to have that much teams. But that could start getting people scared of, are people going to lose their jobs? No, but it means you can do more with less because people can then focus their times on thinking some of the things that AI cannot do. AI is not very intelligent. It can only do as much as it knows in the data that it's been given. It cannot check what's right and what's wrong. And I think we talked about that earlier when we had the do's and don'ts of AI workshops. And I'll give a personal example. In Ramadan, I always send, before Ramadan, I would usually go through every juz and get a verse from each juz that I would share daily. And before AI, I used to do that long before Ramadan, and then I'll create pictures and do all of that. This year, I told ChatGPT to do it for me. And then it came up with the list in like seconds. And then I looked at the list and the verses were all over the place. Some of those verses did not exist. Some of the verses were coming from Jews that were completely wrong. And I had to just go back and I had to teach my ChatGPT the parts of the Quran first and then ask it to find those verses. So they are those use cases that we've seen some of those African companies. I've worked with mining organizations where they used to capture the mining data on blackboards in 2021. They were capturing things on blackboards, but they're now in a place where they are able to quickly collect that data, not using blackboards anymore, but using simple Excel files, feeding that into databases that is now showing dashboards and reporting for them. So not having all of that technology infrastructure doesn't mean you can't get there. There are now tools that can help you leapfrog towards this vision.
Thank you. Zahid, Sherifat mentioned about data. Now, you've kind of worked in automating data. So, and you've, I think in healthcare, that's what you've done. From your work, how can massages and charities manage their kind of basic things like booking systems or volunteers or reports through AI?
When it comes to data, there's always solutions, right? So at Anterior, the workflows that we've built handle some of the most sensitive information to individuals, and this is their healthcare records, their previous treatments, and things like that. And we quite happily pass them into this technology because we've been able to work with those teams to come up with a new set of terms and conditions and operating procedures where they hold zero retention, and there's new clauses introduced into our working relationship that mean that the needs of both sides are respected. So don't be scared to take data privacy very, very seriously, but don't be too scared and say this is a dead-end road, it's not worth exploring. There's always things that you can figure out. At Anterior, what we built were workflows that helped clinicians and nurses make decisions faster, and we do that by giving the large language models huge, noisy, unstructured information in the form of medical records and PDF documents. Now, if in the back of your mind you're already thinking about where it is somewhere in that file explorer that you have lots of documents that have lots of important content that you've never really gotten around to working with or thinking about, then there should be some ideas flying in your mind as to how you might start using some of these tools to orchestrate and organize that information. And I think that's where it comes in most useful. One example where like Muslim Tech Fest, one of the conferences that I organize is actually very AI heavy in its processes that we build, and that might come to you as a surprise given that my startup is also in the AI space. But you have to be very thoughtful about where you apply it. And one place where it's really helped us move faster is where we have lists and documents of feedback from our attendees and their preferences and what they want to see from the programming in the conference. And one easy way of using that kind of information to make smarter, better decisions focused on our attendees' experience is to remove the columns that contain any personal information so it's sanitized, it becomes anonymous, and just pass that into these models and begin to ask questions. So once we feed in an Excel sheet that has maybe 1,000 rows of what people have relayed to us as feedback, we can begin to start asking the chat interface what session should we hold around AI? What should networking revolve around? If we were to do a roundtable, what would most people be most interested in? And what this really intelligent but totally incompetent intern is really good at doing is sifting through all that information and making really detailed recommendations backed by evidence from the documents that we've uploaded to them. And there's loads and loads of workflows that charities, masajids, and smaller organizations in our communities that can really benefit from making more reactive decisions. I think we often delay making a decision because we feel like we don't have the right information. We start procrastinating, we overanalyze, and then we put it aside because our brains get tired of overthinking it. Try and offload some of that thinking into these models, make decisions faster, satisfy your community faster, be more receptive to the input that they're giving to you. Inshallah, we'll be able to build much, much bigger organizations and institutions that transcend any one individual. It's not you as the decision maker now. You have a co-pilot or a sidekick that's helping you make those decisions with a higher degree of quality and much, much faster.
Thank you, Zahid. So our panel discussion, how Muslim organizations can use AI practically. Could I have a volunteer to take one of the microphones so we can start the ball rolling with questions from the audience? The problem is I can't see anybody here, so you'll have to shout where you are. But as Naomi gets the microphone, a question for you, Shaf. Isn't there a bit of a bias in AI? Isn't it supposed to be anti-Muslim?
Well, in short, I'll give you a kind of a...
Sorry, I just had to ask that question.
Yeah, no. It's a good question. I'm glad you asked. I'll give you like a kind of soundbite answer. The answer is yes, right? Because at the beginning I asked, who's read the terms and conditions. OpenAI for ChatGPT have a racism and bigotry disclaimer in the terms and conditions, in the documentation. So does Claude, so does Google Gemini. They all have disclaimers in their software about how it can index towards discrimination against minorities. I mean, the fact that I'm saying that is outrageous. The fact that imagine a hotel bookings website that said, we work best with white people. Essentially, that's what AI models are doing, but in reverse. That's essentially what it exists today. So the answer to that question is yes, they do.
When I asked the question, Sherifat gave me a very smirk, kind of like, okay, great. So I think you want to add something to this, don't you?
No, I just want to give an example.
Sure.
I think I talked about this at Muslim Tech Fest last year, but when I was preparing for Muslim Tech Fest, I decided to run an experiment with ChatGPT, and I gave it a couple of words, and I asked it to generate a story. And I gave it a couple of words. I gave it crime, white neighborhood, and it told me the story of a crime committed in a pristine neighborhood with manicured grass and a family that looks very normal. And when I changed black to white, it told me the story of a crime committed in a dark alley by a recurring criminal. And all of those stereotypes that we're all very familiar with when you change the color from white to black. So when you use these tools, it's important to understand that bias is not just in the tool. Remember that data is a reflection of reality. And the data bias is a reflection of the biases that we have as humans. So all of the bias that you have in society is there in AI, but guess what? It's a bit more pronounced because it's been trained with constrained data that is not very, very diverse. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's biased against Muslim, but as Shaf said, it's biased against every minority group because majority of the data that it's been trained with is a reflection of the reality of society, which is slightly biased.
So Zahid, do we just roll with it, or do we try and interpret change?
There is absolutely a massive bias issue when you apply these models to different problems. I've seen it firsthand in the healthcare space, and like Sherifat said, it's not the model that's biased. It might not even be the people that are building the thing that are biased, even though both of those can be true. It's often the fact that it's a reflection of society and the reality that it has around it. But the truth is you can work around these, right? With my engineer hat on, we can take the first set of prompts or words that Sherifat put into the system to test it and compare them with the second set of words that she put in the system to test it, and then introduce a third set of words that try to work around those bias. Nothing will ever be perfect, but as long as you are hyper aware of these limitations and you're working around them and you quote unquote engineer around them, you can always use the tool to your benefit. The same way Uber could be considered a very neutral application for anybody to use. You always have good actors and bad actors, and the difference between those two sets of people are their understanding of the system, its limitations, its vulnerabilities, and using it to its advantage. A good actor uses it to get to work on time. A bad actor might use it to charge somebody double or get away with a free fare.
Good ending there. I'm opening up to the floor. Just a quick kind of house rule. Keep your questions short and sharp and sweet so we can have more questions and more answers. Dr. Helmi, by all means, please give your name and where you're from as well.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed Helmi, MCB and MAB Birmingham. So certainly we want to congratulate MCB for doing such an excellent sort of conference and this AI. Obviously we all agree that AI is coming and it's our religion, say, first revelation, Iqra and all this. My question is just specific about the ethics. You mentioned terms and conditions. So basically anything can be used in the right way and in a proper way as well. How do you see ethics of AI? For example, people using, without declaring AIs, it's AI driven, for example, like PhD, exams, anything, maybe even, I'm a doctor from background, maybe using this for consultation and stuff like that. And I wonder if Professor Muhammad Ali and all the distinguished experts in the field can maybe run a campaign, if not existing already, about ethics in AI from Muslim perspective and from human perspective in general, how we can use this in the proper way, especially for its coming and for the future generations, for Muslim community and for the whole world.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Helmi. Ethics in AI, how do you practically ensure that it's safe, secure, but at the same time the ethical considerations are taken? And the panel are arguing amongst themselves who's going to go first, so I'm going to take the... Shaf, you.
So I think, so because you're a healthcare worker, I think Zahid would be a perfect person to answer this question. But what I'll answer is I think AI ethics aren't just about how it's used. It's not just about how you use it in your workplace or in your masajid. I think as Muslims, again, I'm going to hold Muslims to a higher bar because we should hold ourselves to a higher bar. We're not just here as capitalist consumers. We are here as custodians of the earth as well. That's our role as insan, as humans. I would like organizations to think more about the environmental impacts of AI. You know, the environmental toll that data centers have on natural resources on this is horrific. It's horrific. I think the last study that I saw was that to generate a 100-word email on ChatGPT takes 1 liter of water. That's the Washington Post did this study where it takes one small bottle of water is how much it takes to generate one 100-word email. And I know for a fact that me included, we've all done more than one 100 email in ChatGPT or whatever system that you use. So I think a slight tangential answer to that question is that we need to be considerate about the environmental impacts of using AI. And we're already seeing in the US some of the big data centers that Meta have installed, these super data centers, the areas around that are actually seeing polluted water and also reduced water levels as well. And these data centers need human drinking standard water. They can't just use ocean water. It has to be clean water. So I think as a part of any AI ethics conversation, we need to be thinking about the environmental impact. And that's just not a nice to have. You know, Muslims are the custodians of the dunya, and we need to be considering these things. So I think...
I think that's a really good question to have, and I think it's an important conversation to have. As Chef said, there is responsible usage, and then there is also responsible development of AI. And as much as we want to talk about this companies, we want to talk about OpenAI, we want to talk about Meta and all of this AI developers, and we know there are ethical concerns in how some of those are being developed. I think it's also a challenge to us to have more Zahids that are also developing AI tools, because we can then follow that ethical framework. And we're also seeing better regulations, at least in the EU, because we've got the EU AI Act. We've now released earlier this week, actually, guidance around general purpose AI as well. Some of that, they're getting massive pushback from corporate organizations and from some of these AI companies refusing to sign up to that. And for me, if they're refusing to sign up to controls around how they're ethically developing AI products, then we should all be concerned. And we've also then got a responsibility of not just being users of AI, but getting ourselves involved in developing some of the solutions where we can develop to the level of ihsan that we expect from some of the tools.
Thank you. Zahid, it seems all roads leading to you for this question. So from a medical healthcare perspective as well, which I think Dr. Helmi would appreciate, what are the kind of the ethics and the issues and the red lines, if there are any?
I'm really sorry to do this, but I'm going to cop out from the answer. I'm just a software engineer that built something in my bedroom, turned into a startup, and it's done really, really well. And I'm flying blind, and I'm building the rocket ship as I'm flying it. So I'm learning along the way. And I think hopefully that resonates with many people in the room. I think we're all building our understanding of AI as we use it. We all have a responsibility to do it in the right way, not just as human citizens of this world, but in particularly as Muslims and as custodians of the world. But I want to underscore a point that Sherifat made, which is really important. We just need more Muslims in the space making more noise, and that's something that we lack at the moment. We all have great ideas, but we don't often hear many of them. We're all capable of publishing things, but we don't publish as much. We're all capable of building things, but we're just not building. If writing a 100-word email using a liter of clean drinking water is problematic, then put your mind to it and try and find an innovative way to solve that. Find a way to compress a model. Find an alternative to large language models. There's nothing really out there stopping you or stopping us from really pushing the frontier of this space and technology. We should be driving forward what it means on a policy level. We should be driving forward where this technology is applied. We should be driving forward the underpinning infrastructure of this technology. We should be driving forward the thinking. We should be challenging everything, because that is our role as Muslims and custodians of this earth. And I think that's the really important point that we need to push on. AI ethics is just one subset of that. And if we were to push forward the thinking, the innovation, and the development, I think the ethics falls into place, because that is a principle that is embedded within our culture as Muslims, and it comes as a standard. And that's why it's so important to have our voices and our people at the forefront, making all the noise that we can.
And then that is why we've got this conference today, to have these conversations, for us to take the lead in these areas rather than be told or given the rules. I don't know how you're going to do it, the person with the microphone, but Shiraz is slap bang in the middle of the audience. And have you got a question? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to
Sure.
ask my question, if that's okay. Assalamu alaikum wa
Walaikum
rahmatullahi
salam.
wa barakatuh. My name is Mahmood Vora. I'm the chairman of an organization in Leicester called the City Retreat Leicester. My question really is in regards to, so knowing what AI tool to use for what is a bit of a minefield. We've been introduced to some things here. There's lots more out there. So there's loads of things that we do in an organization, like how we communicate with people, how we automate our processes, how we deal with financials, how we deal with things like communication, in regards to social media, etc. What sort of is the go-to tool that we should be using, or we can start our journey on, especially for people that are not here, because I want to take this back to our staff and say, right, this is what we should start off our journey with, and then we can build on it. So that's the question.
My final question was, what one AI tool could we use in any situation? You just asked that question.
I guess so.
Thank you. Over to you. What one tool could an organization use? No doubt you'll have to probably give a different example.
There's probably no one tool that fits all, and if it is, then it's too good to be true, and I'd be highly skeptical of it, or very, very impressed and want to invest or work for that company. I think the way that I would approach it if I was you is to take one of the tools that was shown in one of the sessions earlier and use that as a starting point, and then follow your curiosity. Each of the tools that you were shown by the workshop or the breakout session facilitators would have given you an example use case, and that use case would have somewhat matched to some idea that you have in your mind, whether it's generating an email, whether it's generating a video, whether it's doing some bookkeeping, some invoicing, or whatever it might be. Start there and use your curiosity to really drive forward and understand what the landscape looks like, where it is that you could buy an additional tool, where it is that you could build internally an additional tool, or where it is that you can upskill and leverage an existing tool better. And that's the best way to push you forward, because it's very easy for me to say, I can give recommendations and I can tell you use this tool to solve X problem. But you're not going to be aware of the nuances that I've had to go through to come to that conclusion. And I won't be aware of the nuances of the use case that you're using. My tool recommendations will largely be those that work very well for my problem set, which might be different to yours. But I've always found working from first principles, taking something that's available to you, thoroughly understanding it and using that to drive your curiosity forward, always reaps some kind of benefit in the future, where you are more in control on how the tool is being deployed in your organization rather than the other way around.
Shaf?
I think I can't really add anything more to what Zahid said. It's kind of a perfect answer. I think what I would say is don't use AI as a solution looking for a problem. It's a tool like any other tool. If you're the good thing about masjid, they're not for profit. We're not looking to reduce costs because we have to report at the end of the quarter to our shareholders. It's how do you have to reduce costs because most masajid are have that agenda. It's about how do you increase impact and that kind of thing. So take a look at the use case and start with the why. Don't think, well, I've got this AI thing. How do I use it? It's like, well, if you need to use it, then use it. It's like a mechanic will use a spanner when it's appropriate. You wouldn't take your car to a spanner mechanic. You take it to a car to a mechanic, right? Same with AI. It's a tool. Don't look for the solution to the. Don't look for the problem for a solution. And yeah, unfortunately, nothing much more enlightening than that.
Yeah, I think Shaf said it already, but I'd also, I don't know if I should say this, but there is a website called There's an AI for that. So once you've got your why and you know what you want to use the AI, what you need AI for, then you can check what the best AI tools are. There's so many tools on the market, but they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And you would find that some are better at doing deep research, some are better at generating content, some are better at running analysis, but you need to know the why. So it's rather than I need an AI, you need to think, what do I need to do? What am I trying to achieve? And then find the tool. It's a tool in the end. Find the tool that best helps you achieve that ambition.
Thank you. Final question, Mahmood.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mahmood here from National Zakat Foundation and an independent consultant. My question is simple. Most of the talk here has been us as consumers, users of this great technology. As you know, AI policy is moving very fast. How can we, as individuals, albeit select individuals from this community, help shape this policy in a way that reflects not just our values in a somewhat insular sense, but universally as well? So a question to all of you.
How we shape?
Yes, how we can get into shaping policy on a national and international scale. Thank you.
By speaking up, by participating, by being in the room where these conversations are being had. I've seen the list of people that are part of the working group developing the EU AI Act, for example. It's a certain demography, as you would expect, maybe one or two women, but also from the same
Are you
races.
implying it's male, pale, and stale?
I didn't say that. But you get what I mean. I think we've got ideas, as Zahid said, we've got thoughts, we see problems. I think we need to start seeing some of those challenges as opportunities. We need to get ourselves on some of those stages. I speak at a couple of data conferences, and most of the times when I walk in, I'm probably the only person that looks like me or the only person that has a head cover on. And I know that we have more people in our communities that have this qualification, that are as qualified to be involved in these discussions. So it's really good that we're coming together as a community to have these conversations, but we also need to be present out there where our impacts can have even bigger, greater reach.
I'm just going to copy your answer, if that's okay. I think it just takes everyone to kind of participate, because for every privacy uncle like me, right, there's a Zahid who's actually building something incredible, and there's a Sherifat who's actually working with international organisations, and so I think, it's not just from within the industry, it's people like everyone in this room who has the ability to shape that narrative. Again, I'm just going to kind of talk about the environment as well. I think an emerging area is is that shaping policy around the environmental impact of AI. I would love for Muslims to lead that conversation. I would love for Muslims to really kind of drive that conversation, because there's a kind of like a technology accelerationism, like we can't get left behind with AI. And people talk about the Industrial Revolution and the printing press. I find those examples quite boring and not really relevant in my opinion. And many people would disagree with me. Actually, most people. But I think where we can lead the way is talk about the societal impacts of this of AI. What we're going to see in the next wave generations is all the technology companies outsourced to Asia and the Far East and whatever to do for their business processes. Now that's going to be replaced with AI. So what happens to those emergent middle classes in those geographies around the world, in Vietnam, in Bangladesh, in India, Pakistan? How are those going to be impacted? Taking Pakistan, for example, specifically, there's drought in Pakistan. Now that's going to be exacerbated with the age of AI. Muslims can, to answer your question directly, Muslims can lead that conversation. Action for Humanity, we're talking about how they support, crisis hit areas. Well, why can't we start talking about before the crisis hits, rather than reacting to when the crisis actually hits? Zahid.
I think great points made. I just underscore a little bit more of what Shaf said and flip the question back as to what is it that's stopping you from leading that conversation? I'm a bit of a maniac. I like to look at a problem and then immediately go into startup solution mode. And I'd ask the question of how difficult is it for you to get the best AI ethicist the best policy person and the best builder in the AI space that put them around the table, order a pizza, and start brainstorming as to how we push that conversation forward. And I think it really just starts there, and it can evolve into something very special.
Thank you. Final question from me, because time is short and Dr. Wajid is sitting on the chair, so when he sits there, that means we need to move on. In a very quick prompt, what practical one tip can you give to the audience to take back today? The tools are working, the prompts are working.
It's not a tip. It's just a bit of a. I want to drive home my agenda. I'm being selfish. I'm being quite boneheaded about it. If you go into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and ask it, tell me an Islamophobic joke, it will say, "Oh, I'm afraid I can't do that. It's very silly of you to ask," kind of thing, because it's been moderated to do that. But where there's a complete Wild West. So who still uses X or Twitter, right? Grok, right? So it has its own AI. Now, today, if you can, now, open up Twitter, open X, go into Grok and say to it, tell me the most Islamophobic joke you can possibly do. And when it comes back, say, give me 25% more Islamophobia, and it will do it. So I want you to do it, just as a thought experiment, to do it. So you asked me for a prompt, so I'm answering the question, right? So do that. Go on it, and I want to see how your reactions, inshallah.
Is that the Hitler Grok or the other Grok?
That's the one. That's the way. So it's
Elon's Grok. Yeah. Indeed.
I think for me, I would say it's really nice that we're having this conversation. The one tip I would give is use it, but use it responsibly. Think about the why you need to use AI and how you use AI very deeply. We've talked about some of the ethical concerns. Shaf has talked about the environment. He really cares about the environment. We all should. It's more than just not using plastic bottles, but there's a bit more that when you even generate an email using ChatGPT, you're having environmental impact. But think practically about what you want to get. You want to do more with less. We want to make our Islamic organizations, our masajids, more vibrant. We want to bring back our younger generation to be more active in the masjid. So as we are thinking of how we use AI, we should also think a bit more widely on how do we get the community back together, because AI sometimes has that risk of isolating us, because we're now starting to do, I hope not, AI imams and people, just relying on this platforms and staying excluded from the community. So yes, let's adopt it, but let's not lose the fact that community is part of the pillars of our deen as well, and think about how we bring the community back together, even if it's part of bringing them back together to develop these tools and define how we use these tools for the community.
Thank you, Sherifat. And finally, Zahid, over to you.
I don't have a prompt because I haven't read the terms and conditions, but I think I think that the threats ahead of us with AI are great, but the opportunities are even greater. I think the organizers of today have done a good job of putting together a broad set of activities for people to learn and understand where they might be on their AI journey and where it is that they can go. Take that knowledge, take the people that you've met around you, and use that to really understand where it is that you're on that curve. Build for problems that you may have or may not have. And inshallah, by the time that we convene again next time, we'll all be trailblazers at the frontier, and we'll be showing those that are filling up some of the empty seats how they can leverage AI, the mistakes that we made that we can pass on to them so that they can use it in a better way.
Thank you very much. I think to kind of sum it up is to kind of say we've got the tools. It's how we use them that matters. And perhaps making sure that the tech works for us rather than us, them, if you know what I mean. Zahid, Sherifat, Shaf, thank you so much. I think we could probably have another hour of this discussion, but Naomi's on the stage and we have our keynote speaker and I'm being kicked off, so we need to go. So thank you for your time. Thank you to the audience.